friends, and welcome to this brand new series of video where I will show you how to use your card making dies to create gorgeous scrapbooking layouts. Today we are creating with a brand new winter evergreen foliage and ladybug edge die, and they are from the Winter Garden collection by Susan Tierney Cockburn. These are from Spellbinders and they are being released today, so we're hot off the press here. As usual, I will link all the material used here in the description below, so make sure you check it out. And also Spellbinders has just opened a UK store, which I will link also. I love this as it guarantees that all my order arrive to me quicker and I avoid any nasty surprises in the form of extra custom fees. I try to avoid shopping abroad where I can, so this was a really good news for me. By the way, I'd love to know if you ever shop abroad. Please let me know in a comment, as I really would love to know where you guys are from, as well as which are your abroad go-to stores. I'm always looking for enablers, I suppose. So yeah, please put in a comment. So let's get started on how I created this layout. I use a Colour Vibe cardstock by Simple Stories. You've got a lot of different colours from the cardstock. You've got one side that is plain colour and the other side has the Swiss dotted print on it, which bring a lot of texture. For this layout, I actually used the Swiss dotted side of the paper simply to bring out even more details from each die cut pieces, and it really gives a gorgeous nice effect to those pine branches. I use my Sizzix die cutting machine, the Big Shot, to put them through. They are manually cranked. As you can see, my cutting boards are fairly used up and getting a little bit tired, and towards the end of cutting my branches, I simply used the detailed board instead, as it seemed to go through a lot easier and give me a cleaner cut. For the back of my layout, I used again the Colour Vibe cardstock by Simple Stories, although it's more of a pattern paper. You've got two sides. One side is that wood grain effect and the other side has more of a ledger effect print on it. You can get them at scrapbook.com. I will also link that in the description below. I used a plate to draw around a circle. My compass is a little bit too small for that, so I always go to my kitchen plate, and I found out that my little dessert plate is a perfect size when I want to create a wreath. So this is what I did there. And sometimes you don't need to buy any more materials when what you've got at home does the trick just fine. So this is a little bit of a money saving exercise right there. Once I cut out the circle by hand, I turned it around. I wasn't overly bothered that it wasn't perfectly circled and round. It was perfectly circled, but the edge weren't perfectly smooth, and I wasn't overly bothered by that because I knew that was going to get hidden in the future by the wreath. The reason why I chose a lighter center to my circle by turning that paper is simply because I wanted the wreath to really stand out and not just get lost on this big dark brown background. I used a little bit of scrap of cardstock to attach the center of the circle. You could also think of maybe raising the outside of the circle, the main background, on double-sided sticky foam pad on a full pieces of 12 by 12 sheets of paper. It's something I've done in the past, but in this instance I wanted to keep it all one level, which is fairly rare for me, I will admit. I then went on and glued each single layer branch of pine tree, I would say, die cuts. And what I did is I started by my darkest green cardstock, and then I built up to the lighter one. I will save you going through sticking everything. You'll see I will fast forward through it because it does take a little bit of time to go around it. All I did is really making sure that all my circle is covered. I didn't want to see any of the edges that I have cut. I wanted to lose that completely. And then I tuck the next branch underneath the previous one, layering more and more branches and creating almost a lifelike wreath like you would have on your front door. It's a little bit the look that we're going for right here. Once I'm happy with what my wreath look like, it's looking really full and nice, it's time to mount my photograph. So I'm mounting them onto a slightly darker red cardstock than the one I will use later on. I'm using double-sided sticky tape, and this is what I usually do. I rarely use any wet glue onto my photograph simply because I don't want to create any warping and I want them to look perfectly flat onto my layout. I love those photos of Sophia. These were taken on Christmas Day. She was wearing her princess dress, which she got for her Christmas present, or as part of her many Christmas presents. And she was posing in front of the Christmas tree, and all of a sudden she burst out crying because she was sick of Mummy taking photos of her. And I captured it, and these are really hilarious. It was just one of those moments that you just have to capture. It's in a fraction of a second. We went from a smile to a big burst crying, and I think this is the kind of thing we need to keep on recording as well. It's not all about just the happy memories. Now it's time to trace my bow. I do not have a giant bow die, so I always do mine by hand, and they're very easy to actually do if you use a little bit of measuring. I traced line first at 1/2 inch, then 1 inch, then another 1/2 inch, and then I went across and traced some more lines to mark where my bows would fold, as well as where they would be bigger and where they would be smaller. I then traced them by hand, and you will see it just creates a little curve. It reproduces the design of a normal dies. Once those are done, I will cut them by hand and I will form them to create a nice beautiful bow. You can find all the detailed measurements onto my blog, which will be linked below also in the description. So please make sure you check it out because you'll have a lot more details as to how to recreate this beautiful bow. Now that the bow has been cut out, it's time to shape it up. I like to give it a full-on volume look. I roll the paper around the paintbrush. This allows to help it bend and not give a crease when you fold it. It keeps a rounded shape to it, a more rounded shape to it. And then I glue it with the scrapbook.com glue. I felt afterward that it needed that center part. I wasn't too sure at that point if I was going to use a button or paper, and I went with the cardstock. I simply cut out a strip of the same dimension as the center part, and when I went to try and glue it on, I felt that the center wasn't actually tucked enough to really give that exaggerated thinner center that a bow normally has. So I went on and with a craft knife trimmed it a little bit. Now I'm happy with it. I glue it closed with my scrapbook.com glue. Happy with the final bow. It's time to attach it to my layout as well as my photograph. I'm using double-sided sticky pads for that. It's something that I use all the time on my layout. I'm having one photo more raised than the other. It's a technique that I use a lot. It helps me have the main photograph or the photograph that I prefer, or whichever, stand out slightly more, and it creates a lot of volume as well as help to focus and bring focus to the photograph and the image rather than all the decoration that goes around. It makes sure that your photograph is still the #1 star of your layout. For the second photograph, simply for it to be slightly more raised than the first one, all I do is double the amount of sticky foam pad where it needs to be. I only have one layer of sticky foam pad where it will be over the previous photo, and the rest has 2 layers of sticky foam pads. Now that the photographs are in place in a way that I'm happy with, I am centering the bow. I'm using my ruler to make sure that I have the center of my bow bang on at the 6-inch mark, and I'm adding a lot of double-sided sticky foam pad just to make sure that it's really securely in place. Being such a big bulky element to the layout, I want to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere and that it really stay in place, especially with the amount of die cut we've got in the background. It's time now to look at my title, and I'm using again the Color Vibes element from Simple Stories. Here I'm using the foam letters in red, and I'm placing them onto white cardstock, which I will fussy cut later on. This helps the title to stand out without looking too bulky. It keeps its detailed letter by letter look without looking too overwhelming. Now that it's nicely fussy cut and I'm happy with where I'm going to place it, I am looking at attaching it with double-sided sticky foam pad, simply to keep that volume I've got behind with all my photograph. 1 layer of double-sided sticky foam pads where it's on the photograph, and 2 layers of double-sided sticky foam pad where it'll touch the background of the layout. For the second part of my title, I'm using the Color Vibe Alpha sticker book from Simple Stories, and it's in bright. They have several Color Vibe sticker book of alphas, and they are different shade of colors. You've got spring, you've got summer, you've got winter, you've got the neutrals. There are a lot of choices of colors, and it's a really good way to add more alphas. Here, because the sea was onto the second photograph, I decided to attach it onto some white cardstock because it was a little bit over both, and I wanted to make sure that the sticker wasn't going to fall down and stick to the photograph below, so I simply attached it to some white cardstock. I then pulled out all of my epoxy dots that had some red as well as gold from Simple Stories. So we've got different collection here. We've got one that is the wedding collection, this one is the Christmas collection from last year, and the last one was I think from the farm collection. I will link all of these below also. I'm adding them to the branches. I like that the different shades of red bring a lot more volume and details to my page. It brings a lot of depth, and I love the final result. It makes it look a lot more natural and a lot more real. Once all of these are around the layout, I'm making sure that I'm not leaving any places that are too bare, and trying to be equal everywhere. I try to spread them evenly around my page, and I think this is something that have I think I've succeeded in trying to spread them quite equally all over. I wanted to add the date for memory for the future, as these are photos that I really love. I don't often put the date on my layout, but in this instance, even though it was Christmas Day, I just wanted to make sure I remembered the year for when it happened. I also love the extra details that the stamp date add to a layout. I then went on to write down my journaling. It doesn't bother me too much, as part of it is covered by the branches. It kind of gives it more of a tucked in look, but the story was important to me, and I wanted to have it recorded. So here we are, here's the final layout. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please don't hesitate to leave your comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and you love anything creative to do with scrapbooking, make sure that you like this video as well as subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon again. Bye!